Hi everyone, it's Annette from Cotto Verde and today is Dahlia digging up day. I don't know why I'm so excited, it's quite hard work. A few things to note about digging up dahlias. You should really wait for your first frost. We had ours about 3 weeks ago. You don't always need to dig your dahlias. It depends entirely on which zone you're in and what your soil is like. We are actually in the equivalent of a zone 8 here in the UK, so it's mild enough for us to be able to leave ours in the ground, but we have extremely heavy clay soil and they would all rot. So we lift our dahlias. So you need to figure out whether you need to lift yours or not. And if you do lift them, once you've had your first hard frost, and you'll know you've had it because all your dahlias will look like they died, all their leaves will go brown and the flowers will just once you've had your first frost, if you can leave your tubers in the ground for a week or two, it kind of hardens off the tuber a little bit, but you can lift them straight away if you want to. We've done that in the past and that's fine. Each dahlia has got a tag in the ground, but they can easily get lost, so we will cut the stems down and then label each dahlia to make sure that we don't lose the tag. It's better to be safe than sorry, otherwise you end up with a load of dahlias that you have to call unknown until they flower because you don't know what they are. Learn from my mistakes, please. Then dig them up with a fork. Try not to use a spade because you can chop quite a lot of the tuber off. So I'll show you how we dig it with a fork and rinse them off, and then put them upside down in a crate to let them dry off for a few days before we put them into storage. And we store our dahlias in sawdust. It's like the stuff that you put in the bottom of a rabbit hutch. It's really easily available. I'll put a link down below in the description for the sawdust that we bought if you want to take a look, but that's what we use. It's what we found works best for us. So we store our tubers in ventilated crates in our garage, which doesn't freeze but is also unheated, and that's the best place to store them. Our ventilated crates, we make sure they're covered because we have had critters like mice and things try and eat, well, they have eaten some of our tubers in the past, so to protect our tubers we make sure they can't get in. So this is what comes out of the ground here, and you can just try and get some of the earth off, but because we have heavy clay soil I'm going to have to wash this off. I don't really want to put that much soil into storage. And the other important thing to do is to check the top, because at the top of your tuber, and this is another good reason why I like to wash it before I store it, is because if you've got leafy gall, you will notice it here. There'll be all sorts of like weird looking shoots at the top and it will look horrible. This looks really good. So this looks fine. Keep that on there. So this is looking nice and healthy, and I can't see any gall at all. Nice chunky tubers, looking good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on labelling and digging the tubers. I'll do them all exactly the same way that I'm doing them now. Then I will rip out the canes and the string from this bed because we don't need that there anymore, and it was a pretty pathetic support this summer anyway. And then I'll show you how we hose them down and how we store them. You may remember from our planting video, this is the area that I showed you us planting, and what it's really nice to see is that all the mulch really did do an extremely good job because we have very few weeds. I don't know if you can see that. I mean, obviously the canopy of the dahlias helps prevent the sunlight getting to the soil, so that'll help prevent the weeds, but the mulching is so important. I think it's a really good example to show you why mulching helps. I mean, it's good for the plants, but it's also great as a weed preventative measure. Okay, hi everyone. The light's getting a bit low, and so we're just going to carry on digging up the tubulars, which we can easily do in the dusk, but it's not good for filming, so I will pick this up again in 1 second on here when we start hosing them down tomorrow, and then I'll show you how we pack them away for the winter. Today we're in our garage, which is where we store our dahlia tubers, and now I'm just going to check on them because we had some pretty cold weather and I want to make sure that they're doing okay. So it is quite cold in here, but it doesn't get below freezing. It's not particularly insulated, but it's attached to our house, so it's a relatively warm space. So I'm just going to check on them and make sure that they're not mushy or there aren't any signs of mould. And you definitely don't want the dahlia tubers to get squishy at all. And it's important to check every crate because things going on at the bottom may be different to what's going on at the top. And you also want to make sure, which is unlikely for me, but you want to make sure they're not drying out and getting too shriveled. So what I want to do is show you how we've stored the dahlias. What we did was we rinsed them off and lay them out in another room to sort of dry off a bit, because you don't want to store them when they're too wet. And then we put them into bags. So the reason we put them into bags, and you really don't have to, in fact most people don't, is because I don't have very many of each variety. I have maybe 3, maximum 5 of each variety, and so I put more than one variety in a box, and what I was finding was that the tags were getting detached from the dahlia tubers. So we've put each one into bags with the tag inside the bag, because that way when we unpack them we'll know exactly which tubers belong to which tags. So we put them into these bags with the tags, which you don't have to do at all, and then we put them into, it's like wood shavings, it's the stuff you use in rabbit hutches. We didn't really do much to the tubers before we put them in here. A lot of people will clean them up after rinsing them off. So I just want to show you what's going on here. So I've opened this dahlia tuber up and it mostly looks okay, but there are tiny bits of mould. So you can just pull that off. You don't want to leave the mould. These are all unimportant bits of tuber. I should really get my secateurs. I'm going to have to get my secateurs. But there are... You just want to make sure that the mouldy bits aren't squishy. That one is a little bit soft. I don't like that. So I'm just going to pull that off. And there are some little bits of shrivelly tuber here. I'm not too worried because there are some bits that aren't shriveled. But you're checking that your tubers are firm to the touch and not shriveled, and that they haven't got too much mould. Or any at all, really. Preferably, you don't want to put them back in with any mould. And that tuber's not looking too healthy. So I've cleaned up the bits that I'm concerned about, and then I'm just going to put it back in the bag and check the other one that's in there. And this does seem like a chore, but actually most of the time your tubers won't have any mould, and hopefully they won't be shriveled and they'll be fine. You can just put them back in the bag and then cover them up again with the sawdust. So that's all I'm doing, putting them back in there, cover it up with sawdust, and then I'll check the next bag. And you can see again that it's got a tag on. This is a variety called Acapulco, which is a prolific flower for me. And the tubers are firm, there's no mould, they're looking happy. You don't actually have to take them out of the bag, I'm just taking them out of the bag to show you because I can see through the bag and I can feel very easily if they're squishy. So it is important to check all of them. The reason we've got paper in here is because these have got slots in the side. If we didn't put the paper, I worry that all the sawdust would fall out. So I'm checking this one. This is Karma Chalk, and this one again Looks like it's got a little bit of mould. I really should put my secateurs in. I have to go and get them. So this is Karma Chalk, and I'm not happy with this one. And I mean, there's one very firm tube, but what I'm going to do is cut the rest of them off. So I have some secateurs now. So I'm just going to chop that off. It seems to be mostly these skinny ones. Can you see what I'm doing? Not sure you can. So this is now, actually I'm going to chop that one off, it's a bit soft. This is now fully firm and there are no bits of mould, and I'm going to put it back into storage. So this has got a similar problem where the small skinny ones seem to have a bit of mould and they've shriveled. So I'm just going to chop those off. Ooh, flying tubers. Okay, so I'm left with a firm tuber and no mould. I think I've found the culprit. So this is a really good example of what will happen. One of your tubers will become sickly and it will infect the others, which is also one of the reasons why people separate all their tubers in the sawdust. I chose not to do that this year, and that may well have been a mistake because all my tubers are touching. If one becomes mouldy, all the others that are touching it will become mouldy. So even though I separated the varieties with sawdust, I didn't separate the individual tubers. So the other two had a bit of mould on them because this one is going in the bin. So this is a very sickly, mouldy tuber, and I'm not keeping any of that. I don't like the look of it. So the other two could go back in here. So I think that's a lesson for next year, that we're going to have to put all the tubers into individual bags if I want to tag them this way. I may have to find a different tagging method. Some people write on their tubers so that they don't lose the name of the tuber, but I found that really difficult. You can't get the whole name on. Some of the names are like really long, and if you abbreviate it you won't remember what it was. So I'm going to carry on going through this box, and I'll go through all the other boxes, and if I find anything interesting I'll show you, but otherwise that's pretty much it. Do check on all your dahlias you've got in storage. It's really important to check each and every single one of them because you don't want any mouldy infection spreading to the others. I hope this video was useful and interesting, and I hope it helps you understand what you need to be checking and how to deal with any problems as you find them. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Ooh. Seriously. And then maybe I'll put it on his Christmas list. I think I'll definitely put a new fork on his Christmas list. Ooh, there's a lorry outside.